Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the article by Donald Williamson from 2009 titled Caterpillars Evolved from Onychophorans by Hybridogenesis.
Very interesting paper.
Yeah.
We can just jump right in and we can just start talking about how it actually got published because that's interesting for this paper.
All right. So Donald Williamson had this friend named Lynn Margulis, and she was a biologist as well. So she worked in the same field. But she's the one that pushed the paper to the journal. So basically what she did was she was a friend of his, so she liked his paper, obviously, or she wouldn't have pushed it. And she fast-tracked it using a submission route for the journal that he wanted to publish in. So she sent the submission to them, and since she worked with the journal closely, they knew her and they appreciated stuff that she picked out. So she basically helped get it published quicker than it would be in other circumstances. Now, this lady, obviously, you're thinking, why would she back something as wild as this paper? According to the article, Why Everybody Laughs at Williamson, Lynn Margulis' best friend, she had some crazy ideas of her own. And she actually helped come up with the endosymbiosis theory and helped get it known and accepted. So she did a lot of really good work. But as she got older, she started kind of changing pace a little bit and going for some more not widely accepted ideas. One of the most notable being that she claimed AIDS was not caused by HIV. So she had, much like her friend, she had some interesting thoughts and opinions as far as science went. And she did pass away in 2011, so she's not working anymore, obviously. So may she rest in peace.
I was about to say, if this actually went through editors, there's no way this would have gotten in.
No.
I mean, like I said, I only read this first sentence of the abstract and was like, okay, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is ridiculous.
It's wild. So let's talk about that a little bit. So we both mentioned when we first read it that it was a little confusing. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I'll just basically reiterate exactly what I said to you. I literally started reading this and I was like, am I dumb? Because I read this and I was like, I have no reading comprehension apparently, because I have no clue what this guy is trying to say. I started the paper, was just like, I'm just going to start the paper. Didn't even pay attention to the title. Okay, so maybe that was my fault. I did not realize this guy was even talking about hybridization until the last page. And then I was like, okay, this is kind of coming together. I see what you're trying to say. Definitely don't agree, but I see what you're trying to say. But yeah, it was just a confusing paper. The wording is what got me, I think. We talked about, he's from England, so there probably is some sort of language barrier between us because, he's using Old English and not Old English, but British English. I guess, and we're using our American slang and everything, right? So, maybe there is a difference. Yeah, so maybe there is something that's happening there, but just the way he's wording some of this, like I mentioned last night, there was that one where he was like, I think what was it? He's like, I think the larva of this species comes from the adult of a parent, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
Just little things like that. I was like, what is happening? So yeah, that's just, it really felt like brain fog, basically. It really felt like I had just no clue what was happening.
Make you decide if you had COVID or not.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know. Wait, something's happening. The COVID effects.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah, maybe it was language barrier. Maybe he was just crazy. Who knows?
Maybe.
I'm kind of, with all due respect, I know he's not with us anymore. I think maybe he was a little crazy at the end. You know,
Yeah.
he wrote this when he was in his late 80s. So
Yeah.
there was
So
some of that going on.
let's talk about him a little bit. So I did a bit of digging on this guy. Because mainly, so I started reading the paper, and that first line kind of smacked me in the face. The whole "I reject Darwin" comment really smacked me in the face. So I was like, okay, who is this guy? Why is he the way he is? So the digging I found was he was a zoologist. He worked in the UK. Obviously, he's from England.
Right.
He was, how old was he? Old.
He was 94 when he died.
Yeah, he was 94 when he died in 2016. This came out in 2009, so 7 years before that. So he would have been 87 when this paper came out. So he was pretty old. He was retired when this came out. So he'd retired several years before. And he'd actually published a bunch of papers before this, I think like 2 or 3, that had very similar arguments in them. And all of these came out after he was retired. So this was like his little baby project while he was retired. He was very arrogant from what you can tell in his writing. And whenever he responded to people that like said his work didn't make sense, he was very arrogant towards them too. Like he did not like to take the criticism they were throwing at him. And it was rightfully earned criticism with how crazy this paper was.
Yeah, no, I also have like kind of like another theory, well, not really. I was kind of thinking about this last night, and just like the way he's talking and like the age he publishes that, like, you know, it was pretty late in his life after his career and everything. And I'm like, maybe he published this and like similar theories just so he could go down in history, you know, because like if it did come out and like by some miracle, which I don't think would ever happen, that, you know, the Darwinian, okay, whatever, hypothesis is wrong and like that's not the way evolution works and it is through hybridization, then this guy would, you know, be very famous, right? You know, I mean, he's gone, so I guess he wouldn't reap any benefits, but like it would be like a really, like his name would stay with us forever, just like Darwin's. So like maybe that was part of it.
Burial site like AT still did.
Yeah. Yeah. Or maybe, but yeah, maybe he was like, I want to make an impact. I'm at the end of my life. Like, let's go. I'm gonna put out this hypothesis that evolution happens via hybridization.
I mean, I guess that's kind of fair. Because I mean, he'd spent his whole life working as a scientist and didn't really have much to prove for it. Like he had some things, obviously, because you don't work your whole life and not have anything to show for it. But his big publications came after he was retired. So you could be right on that.
Right.
But I mean, we'll obviously never know. Dead man keeps their secret. Okay, so.
But like, also.
Oh, there you are.
Like, just like one more thing, like also, maybe he just did it just to, you know, play on people. Because if I, you know, retire in my 80s, I would do something like this, honestly. I'd be like, let's just make everyone mad. You know, like, what are they gonna do? I'm freaking 80, 87. Like, they're not gonna do anything to me.
It's crazy.
So it's not gonna ruin my career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's insane. So. Okay, so do we want to talk a little bit more about the paper and the contents of it?
So, you know, throughout this entire thing, he's like, oh, I don't think Darwin's right. This is what we've seen. And then there's this other source I saw. Who's this from? It's the ICR source, ICR.org. And they were talking about him, like, this is what he's saying. And even they said, they're like, one reason that he may think this, or one reason this might have gained traction is because, and I will directly quote this, is that in 150 years of searching for evidence of Darwinian gradual changes has yielded no fruit. And I was like, what do you mean it has yielded no fruit?
Yeah.
Like, I was very confused about that because, you know, like, I'm not an expert on evolution, obviously, you know, but like we've definitely learned about these little intermediate species that like literally look like half of like one thing and half of the other, like what they're between. Like the biggest example is Tiktaalik, you know, like he was like in between like aquatic and terrestrial life, and he literally looked like it. Like he literally was just an intermediate there. And you have all these species, and then also I don't think they're really taking into account, and I don't think the source was, and I don't think he was in his paper, Williamson, is that mutations can, like, one mutation create a huge change.
Yeah, it can. It really can. Let's talk a little bit about the figures in this paper. I know we both have opinions on them.
Oh gosh. I just don't know what they were trying to do, honestly.
Yeah, so they don't make a whole lot of sense, even with their little descriptions. And my biggest complaint with them, aside from them not making any sense, is the quality of them. This is a published article. And these things are so grainy, they look like a first grader's like clip art project. Like, what is that caterpillar in figure 3, the last caterpillar that's like rearing up on his back legs? Why does he look like a Nintendo 64 character?
I don't know. Actually, you're talking about that one. Look at B.
Yeah,
that one's rough too. Oh my god.
Yeah. They're so grainy.
They're grainy, and there's no like consistency. Like some of them are drawings, some of them are like live specimens. It's like,
yeah,
so bad.
It's sad.
I mean, he referenced them, but he was just like, look at them, they look like these other ones, and it's like, okay,
yeah, like, okay, you're not figuring out,
you know,
what specifically you think looks the same, why you think that's a big deal.
Right. Like, I mean, even if you could, like, even if he was more specific, I mean, yeah, 2 caterpillars may look very similar because they probably have similar selective pressures.
Exactly.
Like, sorry, but like, I mean, it's like all of this has been explained. I think that's what gets me, is that he's like making all these like claims, and it's like, oh, I just don't know why this is happening. If you look at this, like they look similar. It's like, yeah, we know, hun. Like this has been explained before. People have come out with like, yeah, and they've provided evidence. Another thing he does throughout this entire paper is he doesn't actually like do any of the research, which I guess is fair. He's like 87, but he's like, I urge geneticists to look into this, and I'm like, they've done it. What? They know. That's why Darwinian ideas are supported. Sorry.
All right, so I'm trying. PNAS is the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, so it's a big journal. And as you mentioned before, this is one of my favorite journals. I do read a lot of stuff that comes out of it because a lot of them are short and are written in a way that's a little bit easier to understand than other journals, but not as simply as Scientific American would be. So I really like this paper. It was a very popular one at the time. This paper actually calls it a prestigious journal, which I obviously was 10 at the time this article came out, so I don't know. But I do know this article talks about how there was some backlash to the paper for why they would publish something like this, and that's totally fair. This is a big paper. It's a science-based paper, and his article has very little science in it. So it's understanding why people would be like, why would you publish something like this? Not only is it a wild claim, but it's not backed up, like, at all in the paper. So they had a lot of backlash. I'm sure, I've not looked into their publication process, but I'm sure it's changed since then. I doubt they do the fast track thing anymore, because I've not heard anything about a fast track paper in the entire time I've been in college. So I'm assuming that's not much of a thing anymore.
I just generally like the bigger journals like Nature and Ecology and stuff. Like, you know, for this like whole garbage paper assignments, like I honestly, like every time I saw a paper from Nature or Ecology or PNAS, I'm like, they're such a good journal. Like they're not gonna post anything bad. I can read it and know it's fine. Obviously that's not true. But yeah, I know you definitely go into it thinking that, at least
Yeah.
in some part. Yeah,
For
if I saw
sure.
this, I would have been like, oh.